We are now past spring solstice and the new moon and all of that energy coming out here. So now we're in, I guess, Aries season, which means it's season for lots of energy and heat as we prepare to warm up. And today we're going to do it. Wednesday is my time for rants. And today, not so much a rant, but I want to introduce you to a good friend of ours, mine, David Moore. I've known him. Wow. Yeah, we've been talking about how long ages. And he's one of these, one of my more, what we call skip friends. We would, sometimes we don't talk for a little bit, and we kind of go through the skipping through life. And recently we started skipping together again. Like I said, we may not all be on the same journey, same path, but we are all, working together, kind of go together. And David's been a long time business and kind of a person I've bounced off ideas with and have bounced ideas back. And he's slowly but surely, as we see, he's been coming alive like a lot of you have. I think that's been a really big essence out there of how much energy is out there. People are coming alive and kind of realizing it. But let me introduce David. I'm talking here, sucking out the air while you see David sitting right there. Hi, David.
Hi, so nice to see you, Ed.
And so he's out traveling, but can you tell us a little bit? So, I bet you a lot of people, like everybody else, that don't know much about you or have not really heard yet about you, except in very tight circles. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. You know, I'm one of those many who started out in the Christian world and ended up pagan, but unlike most of them that you might have met. A lot of us are really studious, from our Druid brothers to the rest of us. We often have a ton of books, read a lot of books, do some writing a lot of the time. Sometimes that's part of our prescribed study under our teachers and our particular traditions. Well, I was just a little different because where do you start from the beginning, right? Well, my mother started teaching me to read as soon as I could sit up. I have no idea what age that was. She would bring in flashcards, God, God, and walk out and not think that any of it was sinking in. Well, then, for a long time, she would sit with me with books and she would be reading and putting her finger at each, pointing her finger at each word as she went by. And I was reading with her, or at least it looked like it, but she didn't think much of it. And one day, when I was 3 years old, she passed the laundry room and did a skid and a backup and a listen. And I was reading fluently from a novel that we had in the house. It was a little Dick and Jane novel, a kid's novel, but I was reading it just fine. And she said, "You can read?" Well, she'd been working on that a long time, and I'd been silently reading along with her for a long time, but she was surprised. So that's a little early, and the speech came to me a little bit early too, because I remember one time I was 9 months old, and she had me on her hip leaving her friend Joanne's house, and Joanne had a 9 month old as well, and she says, "David, be polite. Say thank you for your hospitality." And I said, "Thank you for your hospitality." And her girlfriend had a great sense of humor. Joanne says, "Can you say goo goo gaga?" to her child. And it's an adorable story. I remember some parts of it actually directly, but then I heard the story a lot of times from my mother, who thought it was hilarious. So besides language coming early, reading came early, and that means that my studies started a long time ago. When I was 5 years old, I joined a ministry school. And I was studying the topic of religion. I was studying the Bible primarily, but I was studying related archaeology. I was looking at comparative religions and doing what most people don't do unless they go to a seminary when I was a little kid. By the time I got to kindergarten, I'd already joined a ministry school and I was preparing talks and giving them with assistants. And when I was 6, I was doing it by myself. So I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, because my mother did that and because I got a little bit of an early start on it, that means that I ended up putting in, before converting to paganism, I ended up putting in about 40,000 hours of study on Bible related and religion related topics. That's different from what most of our brothers and sisters can say they went through, although there's a few out there like me with an interesting early background. But, you know, what that did was deeply ingrained in me study habits that are maybe unusually intense. I didn't have much of a childhood otherwise. That's the drawback. But when I turned to paganism with all those habits intact. And like you, I'm an avid consumer of information to this day. Maybe not as much as when I was a little younger, because now I don't retain it as well. But that's been a big, huge influence on me. That's why I never completely fit into any particular mold. And I would try out one tradition, and there would always be some differences or some questions I asked that maybe I shouldn't have asked. And I was the oddball, the square peg. I was in four different traditions. I was the square peg and ended up going my own way. So I'm independent, religiously speaking, and not affiliated with any particular tradition any longer. And I'm still a student, and I figured some things out, and I'm still, at least I hope I did, and I'm still working on that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
it's exciting to share it. So I teach a very generic witchcraft course online privately in a
mhm.
private group, and that's the most active I've been for some time now, other than privately, like a little hermit. I travel around and
Right.
work as an electrician and privately do my own ritual, but I haven't done group ritual in
Well,
years.
yeah. And then I think that's true of a lot of it. So, hi, Becky. Becky Kitchen says, hi, David. John says, hello. Well, we always like people to do it. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat room and we'll see if we can get to them. And if you are, you're probably across any number of our social platforms. So, if you're on YouTube, you'll be at Pagan World TV, which we're trying to develop, of course, the Heart Magic TV. So, I got into trouble one year. This is kind of a high semester. I got in trouble a long time ago. So we had it actually one of the most intense period of times that we've spent together was in 2012, and that was at Griffin's Nest.
Oh, you mean when we were naked in a hot tub talking?
Yeah, we were all taking that topic. So this is one of those moments in paganism. People go, "What do you What are you talking about?" I got in so much trouble. So I was traveling and I was doing reviews. And one of my reviews was about this really comfortable, like this super. If you ever get to go to Griffin's Nest, and you should, I don't care what else you get there, you have to rent out the entire hot tub. It is like one of the greatest effects, if you especially because it's huge. It's a whole swimming pool. We got some of the sections there. So if you ever go to Griffin's Nest, you've got to rent that extra space. And we were all sitting around, and I wrote an article about just how strange it was, and also how comfortable it was being inside of this sort of idea of being in a pagan world where it was after dark, it was after hours, and everything else. So it was adult appropriate, but it did seem very for a lot of people that takes them back to that in this world of being pagan or being in talking that you could actually have real conversations, non-sexual conversations, while sitting around in a hot tub.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, I always remember that because became a very vivid night for me to sit back and relax, and that was something. And in that, we learned something about each other. One of the things is that we often talk about priesthood and priests and things like that, but you've really pursued much more of being a coach, of talking with people, helping people with their business, you know, and understanding the pagan mind, not necessarily like prayers and rituals, like you said, but you have a really good understanding of how to motivate them to try to take care of their businesses, how to take care of some of their life aspects. Can you talk to that sort of coaching side that you bring to, which I think is fascinating that you bring to the pagan world?
Okay. Um, well, you know, first of all, my personal philosophy includes everyone in the world being part of my family. I do see everyone that I meet as part of my family. I'm not exclusive about it, like if I were a Mason, those are my brothers, or I'm pagan, so those are my brothers and sisters. They are, and there's a different flavor to that
Mhm.
brotherhood and sisterhood that we have. But I do feel that kinship with everyone. So it's super special to be able to work with that flavor of brotherhood and sisterhood and help pagans with their businesses, but I don't have as much experience with that as I do in the secular world, helping people with their small businesses. But to speak about a little bit about it, I've had entrepreneurs such as one particular real estate mogul who owned one third of all of the rental properties right here where I'm visiting in Macon, Georgia, right now. And he passed away sadly, but before he did, for about 2 years, he took me under his wing and he taught me all the little nuances of how he made himself that wealthy and how he managed to accumulate that many properties. And that helps so much. And I think it pays to be respectful and loving toward other people and to be a good listener. When they're speaking, I'm listening and I'm soaking it up. And I think that's why they want to speak some more. And if you can inspire people to teach you, then there's so much to be absorbed and so much to be turned around and shared with others. This is what happens in our lifetime, isn't it? All the time. We always meet teachers and students, and some of them are both teachers and students for us. Well, I've met a lot of them, it just happens, and I've owned a few small businesses of my own. They were intended to be temporary ventures from the beginning. I'll give you a quick example how I just, grab an opportunity when it comes and do what I'm supposed to do. This city flooded in 1996. And when I say flooded, I mean entire businesses, their rooftop, way underwater. It's a valley, it's sort of a dip, and it filled up. So when the waters receded, lots of businesses needed repair. And even though my family trade was electrical work, you see, it takes high fees, a long time of an application process and approval, taking a test, more fees, and finally approval after your scores are presented, and then you get a license to work for yourself. Well, I walked in and got a paint contracting license, and I did it for $42 instantly the day I walked in, got insurance the exact same day that I called an insurance agency and was licensed and insured as a contractor to paint. I picked up a quick couple of commercial contracts because the market was so saturated. The people who were normally pretty busy were stretched so thin they couldn't get painters. I hired a few friends who didn't have a lot of work right then that were coveners or very close to our coven who were pagan. And we went to work and we painted this place together and we got along fantastic. And we gave a good example for our community to the clients who remarked several times how well we worked together, how great a job we were doing. And one guy who had been a paint contractor before he became their construction manager of this one company said to me, I was a paint contractor in New Orleans for 30 years. You're the best painter I've ever seen. And not right then, I thanked him, but shortly afterward, I happened to mention that my staff and I were pagan, and it kind of took him aback a little bit and made him think. My ministry is love, and when I get into any group of people or connect with anybody, that's what gets shared, that's what gets exuded from me, that's what people pick up on, and they tend to reflect it. A group that's all business, give me 1 week with that group, and then they're family.
Mhm.
That's not just a talent, that's what I really work at. I believe that my religion is best expressed right now as love.
Mhm.
Well, love applies to business. Now, I know that business gets a bad rep among a lot of our brothers and sisters in the pagan community, but I think that's because they don't maybe share my value about what good business is. So I want to share it right now while they're listening out there. Good business is when everybody wins. If you think successful business means someone stepped on someone else, then the negative stereotypes have carried you away from the truth. Good business is when everybody wins. Everybody. The supply chain, the end user, the supplier,
Mhm.
the everyone wins.
I guess that's really hard for people right now because they're seeing these big companies who are making record profits, trying to force issues. But at the same time, you're seeing a lot of people start their own businesses. You're seeing a lot of people walking away from this sort of structure. So there's that tension between the everyday life that we see and we've kind of believe in the life that you can have. Because one of the things I do know, you talk to people about side hustles. You're not a single revenue person.
Right.
Uh, and I know you've talked to a lot of people, and I've always said, you need to get a little, you don't depend on one thing for an income. And I think our community really can do a lot more of that. So in April, Dave is going to be leading one of the shows I've been looking for a while. It's Pagan Business show. It's going to be a Sunday show, but we're going to talk. We'll film it during the week and everything else, but it'll be talking about business from a pagan point of view. I think that we're ready for that conversation. I think we need to have that conversation amongst the many conversations we're going to have in pagan world. Uh,
That's so true. And I love to teach with examples. It worked for Jesus, so why not for us, right?
mhm.
So here's an example. There are 9 depressed, low vibrational people in a room, and a person who's feeling really peppy and good walks into the room. A combination of things might happen, but there's two extremes we can study. Either
Mhm.
the one person is brought down by the crowd of negative vibrational people, depressed people, or the one person manages to cheer up 9 people. And I want us to remember how powerful we are. So even in a world where 9 out of 10 businesses were cutthroat and thirsty for blood, We don't have to become cutthroat and thirsty for blood because the other nine around us are. We can be the person who cheers up the whole room. We can be the person who helps force them to meet our terms of good business in order to compete with us. We don't have to match the standard. We can set the standard. So I don't believe that that percentage of businesses are that way. I find a lot of really kind-hearted, passionate about their business people who are in business for themselves. But I am speaking from my perspective. I'm familiar with small businesses. I'm not a large corporate type person. I can't speak for them. The the cold-hearted steel reputation they have, I can't speak for or against it. But I'm concerned with small businesses, and so are most pagan people. If they have a business, it's probably not a huge one. How many huge corporate moguls do we count along among our membership? I mean, in our community. I haven't met one yet, and I'm sure there's one or two, but they're rare.
They
So
are
for
rare. I
most of
actually
us, right?
they're and they're very very hidden. Um,
True, true.
Actually, the gentleman who owned the alley, Mark Thomas, was one, and he didn't let people know because of the fact that there is such a disparity or divide in the income that it's actually hard for the wealthy to actually be a part of our pagan community because of the extreme poverty or the extreme demands at the other end.
Yeah.
I've seen this actually over and over again.
Well, we know how wealth is divided in our world, and so the majority are always going to be the ones that don't feel that they have wealth. And you might define that different ways, but you get the point. When we're looking at the curve, that you're going to find a vast majority are not the top 1 or 2% that own almost everything. So
Oh, sure.
some of them are going to be jealous or resentful of that fact. Some of them are going to
Mhm.
feel like something's owed them. Everybody has a right to their feelings, and I won't speak one way or the other about how they feel about that. I'm sure they have their reasons. All I want to bring to the table is a positive attitude that I hope will radiate out to others and improve business. And that's all any of us can hope to do. We can't control the other person, and we will not benefit ourselves or others by complaining about the other person. We can control what we do, and we can hope that positive vibration spreads to other people. And so far, that's been working pretty well for me. So let's get out there and do it right.
Mhm.
And let's support each other and coach each other to do things the right way and not worry about how other people do it. It'll spread like a plague of goodness, you know?
Well, that's an interesting thought. So Janine says, "Hi, Croden." Uh huh. So I guess that brings.
She and her husband, I had the great pleasure of working with a legendary high priestess and conducting their hand fasting, and
Mhm.
they have been family to me before that and long after that. It was oh goodness, the 1990s, I think, wasn't it,
Mhm.
Gene? And they're wonderful people. Glad you could join us.
See, I keep bringing you all these individuals. One of the things I think I'm enjoying most about the new life, as you know, we raised $1,771. It looks like on our Kickstarter campaign, which ended tonight. Thank you, everybody. 2003 is Janine's answer, so that gives you it. Uh, I had the thing the other day where they said they check your ID and they saw my ID. It says, "Oh, I'm just looking for the 19," and like, oh, that makes me feel so good. Everybody who's now if you have if you have 19 on you, everybody is legal. Um, yeah, makes me feel a little bit older. But we've been out there for a while, but we've been bringing these people forward that we're bringing into a new idea. So one of the things I think that's about to happen, and that's why I'm so pumped about the show coming out and getting started. Because earlier today, we finally got my board together. I got every piece of paperwork done. So we're now really, really independent. So this is like for the first time in years, I'm actually starting a new startup, and I love that. And one of the processes is David and I have been talking. We've been talking about AI. We've been talking about a lot of things, but in this new world, there's a lot of what they call the creator economy, and the idea of creating stuff and making income from being creative. And I think that's perfect for our community. But I do think that better business practices and that David practices and some of the other people, a way of our to look at our community not just as a religious community, but also a support community. Not necessarily financial, but a support community. How can we manage our expectations and do better for ourselves so we can support each other?
That's
Uh,
exactly right.
so
It
go ahead
doesn't
and talk
matter
about
what
that.
business we're talking about or just our personal business at home. The way we conduct ourselves If it sets a bad example for the whole community, then we're dragging everyone down with our actions. And if it sets a good example, then we're raising everyone up. We need to be highly ethical people. I mentioned the private classes that I've taught. I haven't done it for very many people, very few. Just it's
Mm-mm.
not something I normally advertise, but I'm talking about it for a reason, because I don't just teach people business. But when I teach them witchcraft, my first course is ethics. I use When, Why, If by Robin Wood. Wonderful book, wonderful author. But I think that's the most important thing. And when we're dealing with business, again, ethics, values, these are the most important thing. I use the four agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Until we get some ethics and some personal work done, we don't need to worry about anything else, because we're a vessel that either is flawed and clogged up, or is free and going to allow us to express ourselves well, and to let energy flow through us, let our Lord and Lady work with us. Falsehood, doubt, fear, these things cause lots of blockage. Everybody who's been working with energy for a while knows that. And they block our progress, and they block our connection with other people. So, to be the most powerful witch or the more successful business person, we need to be a clean vessel. We need to be free of obstruction. One of the greatest obstructions most of us face is our fear of success. I would love to see us, a powerful, happy people, singing as we march toward our difficulties together and overcoming them. I want to see something like that. And I'm not trying to sound like a preacher in a church somewhere trying to get people pumped up so they put something in the collection plate. This is my heart to your heart, each and every one of you. If you have prejudices or biases against other people for the color of their skin, or prejudices or biases against business for the color of people's intentions that you've seen, those prejudices will trip you up and cost you a mint. It's okay for us to come into our power. I love what I'm seeing right here in the host comments on my screen. I see our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Well, yes, remember how powerful we are. Remember that we can create. Don't worry about what other people do. Get into business for the right reasons. Do what you have to for yourself and your loved ones and for this community for the right reasons. And then you'll be part of what's right in the world. The more you focus on what's wrong in the world, the more those blockages are present and the less you're capable of doing. How do you feel about that, Ed? You've got a lot of experience with these ideas and teaching people. How do you feel?
Oh, I'm right now. I'm in a very unusual position, and one I'm very grateful for, in the sense of I've just completed a major project in the sense of my life. I mean, so Witch School, and which developed over 22 years, developed a great tradition, amongst other things. Thousands of practitioners, tens, thousands of clergy members. I mean, clergy members, registered clergy member. They're across the United States, they're different countries. So I actually got my goal of kind of bringing it to the world. And then just this last few days, last few weeks, I've had to leave it, and it's very unusual. And then when it sees it continue and last, that's important to me. It's still there. The structure didn't. I didn't even ripple off. I didn't even have a ripple effect. I mean, that's that sort of thing. My departure from it allowed me to do that, and also for the CNC, I'm still on the board of directors. But for all practical purposes, every church officer that's out there, every person that's part of that, who's built it, and we're talking thousands of people, have all come from the system that I was able to create. Process was a important part, and I'm not a process person. If anyone knows me, I'm chaos. I am chaos contained in a body. The world changes around me all the time, and now I'm getting to do this next project. I get to be CEO again, and the Peg World project, and that is really about business. It's more about business than people realize. It's the first time I'm actually believing that we have to build an economy. And then when I started looking for that in the last couple of months, I've been looking for people who can help. David has really come out to the forefront. The idea that the world is changing, because I think we need to talk about economy. I'm going to talk about elder care. We're going to talk about other things. We have lots of ritual. We have everything. We're there. We're 168 hours a week. I have to fill the airspace. 168 hours a week is my biggest challenge now, and I
It's a lot.
Uh, well, thank you, Samantha, that you love learning from Witchell. A lot of people do, and it's a great system. Um, and it was not by I'm not an educator by any measure. I mean, by any sort of thing. So it's possible for you to start a project that you have like no idea how to do it, and if you're good, I just saw something. There we go. Witch starter campaign is over. That's been running. We raised our money, so there we go for new microphones. People ask me how do we do it, things like that. So we're gonna give out the swag bags. We have some really great swag bags. So there's some new vendors, some new sponsors. Um, but yeah, we're gonna be doing, I think, a lot more of that energy towards developing it. I'm really grateful for having David here, um, uh, along with this project. Oh, good. Yeah, Plan Buy books. We have more. We have the omnibus out. So a lot of that. But the other side of it is now, I think people don't realize, and I'm really hoping to bring the thing I want to bring to the table. Wow, I've been rambling. Is the idea that I tell me what you want to do. What is it that you want to do? Just tell me what it is, and
Me
I
or anybody?
You, it could be you. I could use you as a demonstration, but I think Pagan Businesses, the show, is part of that idea of helping develop more of these services, more of that ideology, more of that ministry of love, and I can help connect you. I can tell you the steps to get there in the AI world. Uh,
Marvelous. I need some guidance on that. I've been working on it the past few days for the first time ever and brand new at it, and I'm a little confused, but I'm working on learning.
Guess what? The experts in the world were thrown off their game. Everybody, this is one of those I think is a really spectacular moment. Everyone, and I got a good time. Everyone was taken off the game. Nobody expected in November when they opened Chat 3.0, Chat GPT 3.0, that it was going to be so good. And the app API they built so well. The engineers built so well, so much better than they thought. It basically advanced the world technologically 5 years.
Oh,
People are
it's
super.
incredible. I really didn't see any value in it until, what I told you happened. I have a couple of friends who have that
Mhm.
software and they're having a contest. They're each starting with a small budget to work with, and they're going to see in a certain period of time who makes more money just by following AI directions to do it with the resources they have available and the skill sets they have available. It sounds like a fun project for their family, and they can only win by participating in this little game.
Oh, sure, they learn a lot. I mean, if they lose their money, they've learned a lot how it all works, and that's what people are going to need to do. We're going to need to adapt to this new world, and I think that it is. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more. You talk about love and ministry, and that business is a form of love. I agree with that to a large degree. I think it's a social contract with people, in the sense of that if you do a good job and everybody does a great job, everybody wins and benefits. And you see that even the biggest corporations started because at one point, at one time, I mean, as much as we hate they hate Jeff Bezos, I do know for a fact he started in a garage, selling books. And 'cause I actually knew somebody who sold him books when he was in a garage. You know, he figured out a process. I think that's something people don't understand. There's lots. We teach it all the time in magic that there's a process to carry out to get your will to affect the world. So, how far does that extend to? That's what I really want to test next. Hmm? And
Yeah. And it's exciting. I think sometimes, my brother, your speaking style makes people think that you might be of average intelligence and they couldn't be more wrong. The people of the highest intelligence, like yourself, constantly ask questions. They don't ask questions because they're lost, they ask questions because they are keeping their mind in learning mode. As soon as you think you know XYZ about a subject, your brain stops computing, processing, figuring things out, and looking for answers. It closes the file on that subject and it's done. So your learning process is over. Those of us who know to continue asking questions
hmm
get the privilege of learning more. Our brain continues to be the supercomputer that it is and keeps those files open. That's what it really means to be open minded. So you're a big inspiration to me. And I want you to know that. And I want you to know that I think if there's anybody in the pagan world who's underrated, it's probably you, or misunderstood. I've heard things and I just told people, you're nuts. You don't really know him. But
and
I think it's a lot of times because of their bias against business. And sometimes you talk about business.
we
This
talk a lot
bias is
about business.
costing our community a tremendous amount.
Oh, I talk about over the last 20 something years, I have talked about a lot of business. Um, people always ask me, "How do you afford what you're doing?" And it says, "Well, there's a lot of methods, but I'd be happy to share those." Um, on that. So let's okay. So, if people ask your last questions here, we're going to go ahead. So, David, here's what it is. So, what is your favorite pagan memory? Anything that you've had that in your pagan life that you really enjoyed and that you could share with us?
The night that I had a multi-purpose ceremony in the woods behind a little mobile home in Warner Robins, Georgia, and I met my Lord and Lady for the first time. I had been going to churches and I had been praying and I'd been doing this and doing that spiritual thing and incessantly for all those years. And then, as soon as I stepped into a circle with witches that I had been studying with for about a year and a day, give or take, and went through my dedication and naming ceremony and then my first degree, it was quite a multi-purpose circle and it contained a lot. And there they were. They weren't just there because of the glow and the divine spark that's shining so bright in the priest and priestess who are present. They were there separately, like looked like giants to me, these big forms, and they were so full of love and the family protection and a lot of feelings that I'd never felt so intensely before in my life. My personal best spiritual experience was my first circle with a group of witches, and it was one that changed my life and set me on an amazing path. I talk to my Lord and Lady every single day. I consider myself a duotheist. There's God and Goddess for me, and I don't expect anyone else to agree with that, but that was my personal experience. I mean, I know high priestesses of Hecate who that's because they met Hecate in some special
Oh,
way, and
sure.
it was so incredibly important to them, and she kind of chose them. My Lord and Lady chose me, and years later, I was laying on my back, staring up at the moon. It looked particularly large that night. I was laying in an overgrown, out of use tennis court at night, and it was a full moon, and I was looking at it, and I started praying aloud to my Lord and Lady. And this is the only time in my life that this happened. I've seen things, but this is the only time I saw this. Their heads appeared in the sky as large as the moon, side by side, smiling at me, and they started talking, but I didn't hear any words. So they started showing me pictures and doing gestures while they were talking, and I saw that, and then the meaning became clear. And I would ask, "This means this?" Yes, they would nod. I don't know why I didn't hear audio. Maybe I'm just not clairaudient.
Mm,
But for whatever reason, they gave me an assignment, and it was to write. They showed me writing in a book. I said, "I'm supposed to write a book?" Yes. And they told me the purpose. They showed me a scene that was just gorgeous. All these people with smiles on their face flocking to them. I said, "I'm supposed to write something that helps bring your children back to you?" Yes.
mhm.
Well, that's been a long time quest. It's been nearly 15 years that I've been working on trying to figure out how to do that. And I have 80% of a manuscript written, but I don't know if it'll do what it's supposed to do. So I may just be busy for a long time trying to figure that one out. But things that give us purpose, things that give us assignments like that
Mhm.
are profound in our lives. And that one was a big deal to me.
And it's getting easier and easier to publish. So yeah, and
True.
so you get closer, and the book isn't finished until you finish the last page. I tell that to all my writers, but it does take a long time to really speak to that profound aspect of it. And so I think it is. And thank you for sharing with that. We're gonna, if people want to contact you, do you have a way to be contacted? Do you want to be contacted?
Sure, absolutely. They're welcome to see my public profile on Facebook, which is a really easy way to contact me. I see those just like I see personal text messages on
Sure.
Facebook. So they're welcome to send me an ad request. It's facebook.com/Croden, just like I got a hello Croden on the message there. It's Krodin.
There you go. I like that. There you go. Facebook.com/Croden. Oh my God. I don't want to look at the numbers on there. There you go. Out there and everything else. And I thank you for being here tonight. This has been a lot of fun. You're going to see more of David with as we get started with our next season. We're getting our second season is up, getting up and running, and we're so excited. And so on Sundays we're going to have the pagan business show on Sundays. We're also going to have Witch Rising in the evenings, which is going to be our activist show. And we're going to have the
Okay.
International Cafe. So that's going to be we're building a really nice Sunday lineup. And I really thank you, David, for being a part of that.
Thank you so much for letting me do what I can for the cause, and I'm really grateful to you and to everybody else who has supported this effort.
Thank you. And tomorrow, Tarot Thursday. And Reverend Don is going to be back with Mary. And if you want to become a reader on Tarot Thursday, DM us. But there to that, Tarot Thursday, here we go.